This is the Ornate Egg 3D embossing folder from Spellbinders, as well as the coordinating layering stencil from Spellbinders. The layering stencil has 5 different layers to it, and you can use the stencil on its own or with the embossing folder. I first used the embossing folder to create a background with those eggs, just using a piece of white cardstock. That cardstock was 8.5 inches by 5.5 inches. The embossing folder is 5.5 inches by 8.5 inches, so it's nice and large. You can create 2 card fronts at once. With the stencil set, I used a separate piece of cardstock and put some black ink through the detailed part of the eggs, the patterned areas. And then I used some creamy color shift inks to ink blend the eggs on each one of those different layers. This creates a bold, colorful background, perfect for fun and colorful cards. And because of the color shift ink, we have a little bit of that shimmer on there, and the color shift ink shows up differently on the black ink than it does on the white cardstock. So we get some fun looks with that. Using the same layering stencils aside from the patterned layer, I used it to color in the eggs for the embossed background using distress inks as well as those color shift inks for a little bit of that shimmer. This creates a more subtle background than the stenciled ones. Now, the pattern part of the stencil doesn't match the patterns to the embossing folder. So we have 2 different patterns here when we create our backgrounds. These are just fun, colorful backgrounds, and you can create them however you want in whatever color palette you want. Perfect for spring, perfect for Easter. I use these backgrounds to create 2 very, very simple cards, using those backgrounds as the focal point with just a sentiment with them. And then I also used it with the Bunny Buddies die set that's part of the same collection to create a more colorful background with a lot of texture as well as those bunnies. Here are the cards that have just the embossed background using the stencil to color each one of those eggs, and then the card that has the stencil background with some stickles for a little bit of extra shimmer and texture on that background. So some fun cards that you can create with both of these, and you can use them together or separate.